Okay, it's just about time to go. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here. My name is Rebecca, and I work on the content team here at GitLab, and I am joining you from London in the UK. We'd love to hear where everyone else is tuning in from, so please go ahead and use the chat function to tell us where you are in the world today, if you feel like it. And we're going to give people a couple of minutes just to keep joining us. But while we're waiting, we'd love to get an idea of how familiar everyone is with GitLab. So you should see a poll on your screen now. Go ahead and fill that out. Let us know if you're new to us today or if you're using one of our editions already. That would be helpful for us to get an idea of, just what everyone's comfort level is with GitLab. And I'm going to go through a couple of housekeeping items if you haven't joined us for a webinar before. So feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You should see a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen for that. We have our support lead, Lee, here to answer your questions during the demo, but we will also have time for a Q&A at the end. And lastly, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can use the chat function as well to get in touch with the moderator to help you. And with that, that's all I have. I'm going to end the poll. And interestingly, yeah, we've got a kind of a mix today, pretty evenly split between people using Community Edition, Enterprise Edition Starter, and people who've never used GitLab before. So hopefully everyone will be able to take away something useful from this today. And with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Reb. Take it away.
Reb, I am in the New York area, unlike, oops, let me go back here, unlike my counterpart who introduced me, but we can work from pretty much anywhere these days, and the internet brings us all together. So I'm here to do a number of things. First, to introduce GitLab and tell you a little bit about GitLab, but most important is get into a demo that highlights some of our workflow and the really the enterprise exclusive features, so you can see what's different between the enterprise edition and the community edition. And finally, we'll finish off with some Q&A. One of my colleagues, Lee, is here, was introduced, and Lee will hopefully be answering some of those questions on the fly while I'm busy here showing you things, so that we can get your questions answered as soon as possible. But we will do our best to answer whatever it is that people have questions about. All right, so let's get started. First, I want to give you the one sort of marketing slide here that we have, and that's really to get you a little bit of an understanding as to exactly the full breadth of the product. Git is the underlying platform that we work on, but GitLab itself is an end-to-end development platform that really starts, as we say, from idea to production, but as you can see, it really goes on the left from idea to even past production into feedback and metrics. And so if you know about GitLab only because perhaps of version control, we do a whole lot more than that, because we have issues within the product, as well as all kinds of review apps, staging, production, all kinds of tools like this. So we will be covering pretty much everything from idea all the way out to production today as part of our demonstration. And let's move forward here, because nobody wants to hear me just babble on about things like that. So hopefully that was fast enough for everybody, and let's see if I can get people to stop sending me messages. All right, so first I'm going to cover a little bit about our user interface, and the user interface here actually has changed in our 9.4 release. We release every month. On the 22nd of the month, but I don't like to update my demonstration environment instantly, and I've been kind of busy the last couple of days, so do not have the fancy new demonstration environment up here right now. But the old one looks, fairly similar. So let's let me just bring up another window. I see. My browser is playing with me. Just bear with me for 1 sec, please. All right, I'm going to bring up a little window over here, and they're going to show you what the interface looks like. So I am logged into GitLab. This is version 9.3, and as I said, we had 9.4 was released over the weekend. Just a brief look at the UI here first. We have this little hamburger menu on the top left that takes you to a number of different places. Typically, when users log in, they will be presented with this projects menu that we have, which allows you to get right into your projects and get to work. But sometimes people want to do other things, and we have things that will show you the activity that exists across the server on a Git level. We have groups, which we'll come back to in just a minute. Milestones represent, and we'll be using some milestones here. Milestones represent things like a roll up or a release, some big milestone you might have. Issues are individual things that require some amount of attention. They could be anything from bug requests, feature requests, to even, for example, we're pretty open here at GitLab. Our marketing department uses issues to track things that they're doing, anything that you need to keep track of. And merge requests are something we'll be using as part of our demonstration here. Merge requests, when you merge a branch back into another branch, and this is something that other similar products.
Well, Reb, we seem to have lost your sound. Looks like we're
All
almost
right,
back in
can
business.
everybody hear me? I'm
Yes,
sorry about that. I got a big black screen across my laptop, and everything went dead for a moment there.
we can hear you now. Thanks, Reb.
All right, and then it restarted, which is not the best timing, but what can you do?
Thanks, everyone, for bearing with us.
All right. So where were we? We were talking about the user interface, and I think I have everything almost back to where it was. We were talking about issues and such, and merge requests, and yeah, we call other people call pull requests. We call merge requests. And finally, there's a little feature called snippet that allows you to share code around different projects and such. So I'm going to start off with an example of a new project, so you can see what that looks like and how easy it is to create new projects and work. And then we're going to go back into one of the projects that I have already and see just how the workflow might be. So the new project button is over here on the right-hand side. Of course, you also have, there's a plus sign here that always allows you to create a new project or a new group or a new snippet. These items in the upper right-hand corner are pretty much always here. You can also look at issues, merge requests that have something to do with you and that the system wants to notify you about, as well as you can see here there's a little check mark with a little blue number 1 that says that there's one to-do item. It means somebody mentioned me somewhere, or there is something that the system wants to let me know about, just in addition to just being a merge request and such. And finally, I can modify my profile here to change various things, how I'm notified, etc. So let's go and create a new project. And you can see here that the new project, the URL has really 3 components. The first, you as a user can't control. It's the project path. In this case, we are running on a server that one of my colleagues has stood up called gitlab.i2p.online. And the project path is made up of a couple of different things. First, it defaults to my username. However, I'm also the part of 2 groups. So I am a part of the merge request approvers group and also the solution architects group. So we're going to use the solution architects group here to create a project in that particular group. In general, when you're working in a corporate environment, you're going to want to create projects and work for the most part in a group with other people, because if you own a project and you're the administrator and you're the sole person there, probably doesn't work too well when you're working in collaboration with others. If you go on vacation or something, other people need to be able to have access to what you're doing there. But you can create personal projects if you wish. So. Project name, we'll give it a project name. I always love, our developers are so enthusiastic. They always have interesting things for this, like my awesome project. So we'll put something exciting like ABCD 1, 2, 3, whatever. Don't can just create something and put a description. So, most important here is that you can import the project from something else. GitLab really is a web application layer that sits on top of a native Git framework. Um, so if you have a project that's in Git somewhere else, or you want to migrate from some other tool into GitLab, it's really very easy because pretty much everything these days supports putting stuff into Git repos, and this will allow you to import from a number of different other places, including also just a repo by URL. So if you have a repo, Git repo that's sitting somewhere out on the web, and you have access to it via the network, you click this button if you'd like to import it, and then give it the URL. Now, something nifty on the bottom here, you'll see that there's this little mirror repository button. If you're importing from somewhere else, but you'd like to keep that other repo up to date within your GitLab world, you can check the mirror repository button. This exists, by the way, in the Enterprise Edition. If you wish to do that, you can save people time and effort, and also make sure people are working consistently. For example, if you have a library that you're using, perhaps a Perl library, Python, or whatever it happens to be, your favorite repo is some sort of library or something a number of people are using, you can choose to have GitLab import this and keep it up to date for you, and that way your users don't have to actually import things from anywhere else. They can just use that reference to your internal copy of whatever that is. So mirroring is a kind of handy feature. Moving down, we see that there are different visibility levels. Now, GitLab itself has 5 different levels that you can assign to users for permissions, and each of those 5 levels has a variety of different things that user can and can't do depending on what the level of permission is. However, because there's really an underlying Git framework here, users can also access the repositories that you're using without any access to the actual GitLab installation if you choose. So we offer 3 different visibility levels here. First, which is one that I find most people using, is private, which says whatever access you have via the general GitLab access methods sort of applies here. If you don't have access to a project, you can't clone it from just a regular Git command. Second is internal, meaning as long as you have a login on this server, you have access to it from a Git perspective. And the third is, hey, if you have a URL and you have network access to this thing, you can touch it. Now, the group that I'm using here, the Solution Architect group, is a private group, so I'm not able at this point to assign the project itself a visibility level that is more visible than that. If I did, I would receive an error, so I'm not going to do that. Let's tell it we want to create the project as a private project. And now GitLab is going off and creating this project. I see the little blue ribbon here, which is always nice to see. And this means that it has created that for me. And you can see right away the project is given a badge, and you can change this and put a little icon there and make a graphic thing if you like. And there's a description. But most important here is that the repository is empty, yet GitLab has provided some very valuable information. First, we have a URL here. We have an HTTPS URL, or you can look at an SSH URL, right? And this is the URL that people would use to access the project just from regular command line Git. Because as I said, underneath all of this that we're going to see today, I'm going to only show you things really in the web interface because that's really what our product is. But if you have any kind of a command line Git program that you're using, you can access all of your repositories via that. And as you see here, there's just a standard URL time for it. Now, a lot of people say, well, gee, I'm not really that familiar with Git. I'm not sure how to use those command line things. So without having any other any files at all actually in your repository, we try and provide some command line instructions based on the context that you're in. So for example, the system knows that I'm logged in as user reb, it knows what my email address is, and it knows where my repository is. So it can show me the commands that I might want to use for various things. For example, to set up my email address, we have the ones on the top here. If I want to create a new repository and push it into where I have just created my project, or if I like to move an existing repository, etc. So those are very handy. particularly if, as I said, you don't have experience with Git, or if you just want to be able to copy and paste because you're, I'm lazy and always fat finger things, so it's nice to be able to copy and paste those things. All right, so let's move right along, and we've created that project. I will actually show you one other thing. So when you have a lot of projects, I mean, we have free projects available, both public and private, at gitlab.com that you may know about, but there are an awful lot of them, and it's hard sometimes to keep track. So we offer a little sort of star and unstar functionality there. You can see I've starred this, so it says that one person has found this project interesting, or I can unstar it. But that's not terribly exciting in an environment like this. However, when you have hundreds or thousands of projects, it helps to have the most popular things bubble to the top when you go back up to your projects list. So let's go back over to my project list over here. You can see I have not too much. This is just regular sorted by my projects. If I sorted them by starred projects, you would see I don't have any of my own starred projects here, but there are some that have a couple of stars on them, which you see on the right-hand side. All right, so I'm going to go and look at our website project here, and let's take a look at that. First of all, I can see a couple of things. It looks very similar to what I just saw with my project ABC123. But I see that I have three files over here. And these are kind of important files. So let's just talk about what they are. The first is GitLab ci.yaml. If this file exists in your project, GitLab will try and interpret it and use it to run our CI and CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous delivery portions of the product. And we'll see how that works shortly. Now, it happens that my CI also runs some stuff that deploys into Kubernetes and uses Docker. So I also have a Docker file here that just goes along with my CI. And finally, the meat and potatoes of what we're doing is a little server.rb file, which is a Ruby program we can take a look at. And this Ruby file essentially does hello world. In the programming world, the first program that everybody writes in whatever language it is that they're learning is hello world. So we figured this was probably a fun thing to use as a start here. It actually does something. I can deploy it and you can see it run, and yet it's very simple for everybody to understand. So at this point, I should also show you a couple of other interesting enterprise premium features. You see here on the right-hand side, I could edit the file, I could replace it with something, I could also delete it, but we also have this lock button. In the enterprise premium version of the product, you're able to lock files just in case you decide that you want to do that, so that only you can access them. This is typically used in places where people have an executable and they don't want anyone else to mess with it. However, however you'd like to use it, it is certainly available in that version of the product. And then if I go back out to my file list, I can see that there's now a little lock icon here. And so other users would see that this is locked by user reb, which is how I'm logged in. Let's go back in and we'll unlock it because I want to modify this and show you some of what's going on here. So we have hello world, and perhaps I'd like to change hello world to say something else. Maybe I want to say hello there world, or hello fine world. So let's go and do that. Now, typically, if I'm working just by myself, I would just go and edit that file. I can hit the edit button there and go right in and change it. But this is really supposed to be demonstrating a workflow and how you would work interactively with other people, and how GitLab's workflow actually proceeds. So the way that one would generally do that is I would file an issue. Now I'm in the Solutions Architect group, so anybody who is in the Solutions Architect group, and you can see that right over here, I'm in the Solutions Architect group, and there are a couple of people in that group on this particular server. So if I create an issue for this, other people might be able to see it. So let's go over my issues, and we can see that there are a couple of issues here. I'm not going to worry about any of those right now, but you can also see that we have attached labels to these things. So we're going to create a new a new issue, and assign some labels to it, and figure out what we're going to do. So let's create a new issue for this, and I'm going to say, let's make it a wonderful world. I'm going to say add wonderful to hello world project output. And I can change my description in a couple of different ways here. My description is written in Markdown. So let's just say, call it add wonderful to sample code. And we have these little things here that are check boxes. You can use the items on the right hand side to add, well, I suppose in technical terms, we call it a task list. But I call them check boxes. Whatever you call it, it'll allow you to have a list of items that GitLab will then keep track of. So I'll say, please check this once the issue is assigned to you. We'll call one example. And if I preview this, you'll see that there are 3 checkboxes here. And so GitLab will, once we submit this issue, it'll track who has checked these things and what happens to them. I can make this issue confidential, so only certain people with access to this particular project at a certain level have access to it. I could do that just by checking this box. I'm not going to do it. Assignees, I can assign this to either one or more assignees. The ability to assign things to multiple people is an enterprise feature of GitLab. So I'm going to assign it to Mr. Smith, and maybe I'll assign it to Agent Jones as well. So it's going to be assigned to those 2 people. However, you can see that the list of people who I might want to assign it to is longer than that. And that's because there are multiple people in this project. The last 3, Reb, John Woods, and Mike McLaughlin, are all people who belong to this particular project. And so GitLab gives you a context-sensitive list of assignees. It won't let me assign things to people who don't have access to this project, but it'll let me choose from the ones that are. Now I have a number of milestones that I've set up within here. So I'm going to add this to release 1.0 of my project. These are just text fields that I could enter. I could have said the next release that is made available here, but I chose to put in ones that said release 1.0. I can assign some labels here. Let's say that this is a critical thing that has to get done, because in order to have release 1.0, I probably want to do this. Maybe I'll say that this is a feature request that somebody asked for this. So I can assign a couple of different labels there. In the enterprise edition of the product, we also have issue weights. We'll see later on, actually, we just saw on the previous screen, I had a number of different issues that were listed there. But when you have hundreds or thousands of issues, it becomes difficult sometimes to sort them and figure out what you're looking for. So you can sort by milestones and by assignees and all sorts of things. But in case that's not enough, a lot of people want to assign things by issue weights, and you can assign things by issue weights, which are just an arbitrary number that you can choose to determine, and you can use that to determine, how you want to process things. You may assign certain things in various weights, such that you can use that as another function in sorting, calculating what you're doing. And in addition, we also have some, burn down charts within issues and milestones that allow you to sort those by weights as well. So you can list things based on how the issues are and how they are weighted. So in fact, let's assign this a weight of 5, somewhere in the middle, and a due date. Why don't I put Friday the 28th? That seems like a good day to use for that. And so we hopefully will find that this issue is done by the 28th. So let's submit that, and you can see that the system tells me that the issue was open less than a minute ago by Reb, and 0 of 3 tasks have been completed. Well, where did we get those 3 tasks from? We got those 3 tasks because on the left-hand side here on the bottom, you can see that we have created 3 checkboxes. So I'm just going to check off one of those, and when I check off that, you'll see that it's going to update and say that one of those tasks has been completed. And then we also update the stream of messages that are part of this particular issue, and let people know who has done what. This becomes part of, as we always say in school, this will become part of your permanent record. Well, this becomes part of the permanent record of the actual issue. I can check off those two here. In a sec, here we go. It says I changed the description. I may mark the task as example is completed and third example is completed. And we've assigned this particular task to these two assignees, Agent Jones and Mr. Smith, and we'll let one of them check that box once the issue is assigned to them. Now I can also find in here that I have a box that I can write other things. And again, in Markdown, we use Markdown in all of these boxes. So I can make a note. I can say, hey there, and I can introduce myself to somebody. And again, if I put an @ sign here, I can have a link to whichever users I wish. And here I can see that there are a number of different people I can select from my drop-down. And in this case, I'm going to say that I'm going to put a note in here for Mr. Smith. Hey there, Mr. Smith. I'll just ask Mr. Smith to work on this first, perhaps. And I can comment on this here. So now Mr. Smith would now have at least one to do here to look at this particular issue. Why? Because he's been assigned the issue and also somebody has mentioned him. So either of those things would cause Mr. Smith's to-do list, which is this item on the right-hand side here in the upper right, to increase by 1. Now you saw when I put in a comment there, I'm just going to type a couple of letters of text here so I can get another box open here. This comment also has this little drop-down box on the right-hand side of it. In GitLab, we try and provide multiple paths for people to go, but we also try and provide the most common path with handy boxes. And so over here, I can either comment or I could start a discussion. If there was some discussion about, should I use the word wonderful, should it be capitalized, or anything having to do with this, I can start a special discussion on a particular topic. And that is different from a comment here in that a discussion once started can be closed. So people can have a discussion on a particular topic and then someone can say, yeah, you know, I think we've beaten this down and we've come to a conclusion about exactly how this topic is worked out. And then people can mark the discussion as closed. It's also possible within the Enterprise Edition to require that all discussions be closed in order to actually close issues and close merge requests and such, which is a handy way of making sure that people complete everything that they need to do. So we can see on the right-hand side the participants here, the two people who were mentioned, and plus I am a participant in this particular issue because I created it. The labels that are assigned here and the due date, etc. Everything is set up. I can also, if I wished to, I could estimate the amount of time that I wanted to put in here by mentioning that within the actual body of my issue text. So right now, I'm going to go back and log in as Mr. Smith. I happen to have, conveniently, another browser here that's logged in as Mr. Smith. And let's take a look and just have to reset this. There we go. And I can look here and see Mr. Smith has access to pretty much the same things that I do. And I can see that Mr. Smith has been mentioned and has 3 issues assigned to him. And Mr. Smith has 2 to-dos. So let's go and take a look at the to-dos. All right. Mr. Smith has done something in this other issue a couple of days ago. I don't need to do that anymore. I just mark that as done. And you can see that my issue count goes down to 1. And now this is grayed out while I'm still on this screen, and I can undo that if I wish. But I'm going to go and look at this particular issue that user Reb just notified me about 4 minutes ago. Let's go and take a look at what that says. I add wonderful to the Hello World project output. And the first thing it says is, please check this once the issue is assigned to me. And if I check that box, you can see that now 3 out of 3 tasks have been completed. And somewhere down below, it's going to make a note of the fact that I checked that box. So you can say, got it, Reb. Working it around for you. All right, I can comment on that. And let's go and take a look. So it wants me to add hello world to project output. Now, what would be the best way that I could start this? Well, I could do it a number of ways. I could go over to my repository and find the file that I was looking for and create a branch, and then go look on that branch and edit the file. And then when I was saving the file, I could create a merge request, which is how, I guess, when I started at GitLab, we did, at least I did, that kind of workflow. However, if you look here, GitLab really tries to be helpful and tries to sort of provide the proper workflow that we consider, or the standard workflow items to you, such that you don't have to go through lots and lots of steps, and we'll just take care of things for you. So you can basically use the tool and not have to worry about it and let it get out of your way, right? So here I could just select this button that says create a merge request. And what would that do? It would create a branch and it would create a merge request, and then let me let other people know that that branch and that merge request are related. And then I could go and start working right in my branch. You can also see there's a little drop down here, just like we saw with the comment box. So if I select that, you can see there are two ways that I could go here. I could also create a branch without creating a merge request, and then perhaps later on create a merge request, or maybe my branch is just going to sit there and live forever separate. In this case, I'm going to create the merge request and let it create a branch for me. Now, I know some people might say, well, but it seems strange that the first thing you're going to do as part of your workflow is to create a uh, a merge request to merge it back in. But I would argue that having things related so that you don't have to actually go and relate them later is really very powerful, because by selecting that box, I have done a whole pile of things. First, I've opened a merge request, and you saw how we had an at mention of users. We have an exclamation point mention of merge requests. So this is merge request number 5. Um, and we've marked it that it's a work in progress because I haven't actually done anything yet. So presumably I'm going to work on this. And it resolves a particular uh, issue. And if this is closed, it will close issue number 7. So this part here actually is the text of my merge request, which I can then go in and edit if I wish to. And following that, this says this is a request to merge, and this is the branch name. So GitLab just came up with a branch name on its own. It used the issue number and the title of the issue to create a branch, and this is a merge of that back into master. So I've now created my branch and created my merge request all with one click. Very easy. User doesn't have to actually do anything else. More important, it's giving me a list of what has happened in my build environment for this particular project over here, because we don't want you to have to click away and do anything else. Right now it says that I deployed to staging into production earlier, and if there had been something on this particular branch that I just created that had actually executed, I would have had information on that here as well. Now, in this particular project, I have set it up so that I have to have approvers approve my merge requests. And the approvers are, in this case, approved via a group. And that sort of functionality is also a part of the Enterprise Edition. And so I can have group level approvers, and Mr. Smith is not one of them. So that's why it says requires one more approval in order to be merged. And once approved, anybody who has access to this can merge. There are other things that you can do. You can have protected branches, another enterprise feature, so that only certain people are allowed to merge to certain places. There's an awful lot that you can do with workflow there to require approvals and require things like that. So moving farther down, I can see that there are no changes in this merge request source branch, and it says, please push new commits. There we go. If you see, this has just appeared. Now, what is that? This says that it's already deployed my application to a review application. Now, what is a review application? Talked about those briefly at the very beginning here. Review applications are something that allow you to, while you're on a branch, create and deploy versions of your code that you are just testing. So I took the code from that server.rb file and I've deployed it to a branch, the 7add wonderful branch here. And the system has already gone out and created that application in a running environment. And we can see that right here. Um, if I look here, this is where it's deployed, and I can just click that, and here that my application Hello World is running right there. And That's what it looks like, and you can see the URL that it puts in is something that has the beginning part of the label name and some other things. But that's important because I could take that URL while I'm working on this, and we'll see how the project that URL changes. But I could take that URL and pass it to one of my colleagues and say, "Hey, I just worked on this. What do you think?" And so before I've even committed my code back into my master branch to let whoever it was look at it and let people work on it, I can have people looking at that just by passing the URL. And that's a special environment that we have set up again, and this is running in Kubernetes. And that environment, I could stop that environment if I wish. So I'm not going to. Last little thing before we actually get on and make some changes here is you notice it says memory usage increased from 2.2 megabytes to 7.25 megabytes. Well, that doesn't mean a heck of a lot in the context of having just created that particular environment. But if you look up top to my production and staging environments, you can see that I have a report about how much memory utilization there is in those environments when I deployed them before we got this call actually started. And from here, you can see the Prometheus monitoring that we have built into GitLab and how we try and surface the output of that in a variety of different places to let you know what's going on. Every time we build, we're going to look and see how much CPU it used, how much memory it used, etc. And we'll see how that goes when we get back into the environments area shortly. I should point out that I'm running version 9.3 of GitLab, and 9.4, which was released on the 22nd, which I guess was Saturday, has even more stuff that's released, that's surfaced just by default. This is just sort of the default items. So let's go into my repository right now and take a peek. And this is what my master branch looked like. And we can see I have a number of other branches here. And this is the 7 add wonderful branch that was just created with my fancy one click there. And you can see the server.rb file. Here, let's go into server.rb, and I'm going to edit this file. Now, I'm editing it in the web interface. As I said, this is fully compliant and compatible with standard native Git. So if I wanted to edit this using standard Git commands from my Git command line or any other tool that talks Git, I could very easily have taken the URL that I had at the very beginning and plugged that into my tool and just modified that file right from there. In this case, we're doing it from here. Let's make it say, hello, wonderful world. I'm saving this in the server.rb file. If I chose to actually save it somewhere else, because how many times have we gone and edited a file and said, yeah, I don't really want to overwrite what I have here because I've just changed this so much that this is really something new. So I could call it, I could call it new server.rb if I wanted, and just save the file there and change the name if I wish to do so. The commit message here, let's add this. Update server.rb to add wonderful. I always suggest that you change the commit message in some fashion, because if you have update server.rb every single time you've updated this file, you'll never know what change was what. Target branch is just the default that we had here. However, just like with the file name, I could decide that I wanted to change the target branch in some way. And now note, when I typed in something there to change the target branch, we got this handy little box down here that says, hey, you changed the target branch. Maybe you also would like to associate a new merge request with that target branch. Now, the tool tries to provide you with the appropriate workflow, because generally people who create a new branch are going to want to create a merge request associated with that. But it doesn't show you that unless you're actually changing the branch name, which is kind of nice. So let's go and commit my changes to that target branch. And I can see here that my changes have been successfully committed. And I'm just going to refresh the page just to show you over here when it first rendered it. It had done it before we actually had any information back. But you can see right here, this little blue moon, as it were. This says that something is running. My commit is running. Actually, it's running within my CI and CD stuff. So this is actually the pipeline that's running here. And I can click this and go over and see exactly what's happening here. So if I go and look, this is my pipeline running with a variety of different stages. Now, we try and surface this information and keep it updated on the screen for you, so that you don't have to go all the way over to pipelines and such. I was just right there. It said, hey, I'm running this thing. Pretty nifty. Now, the first stage of this is just the build stage, and we can go in and take a look at this. It says that it passed. The second stage is the review stage that's running right now. In fact, let's go to the review one that's running. Maybe we'll catch it before it's done. Nope, didn't catch it before it's done. It said job succeeded. But essentially what this is doing is running my compile and such, and then it says here, you can read, it says deploying to this particular application within the registry. So let's go back over into my pipelines here, actually into my environments here, and we'll see the environments that are created. Now, we hadn't created any of these, looked at any of these before, but before we got started, we had this application running in production. I guess we saw that. And then we had a staging version of it, which was identical. And so there's one staging application running, and there are 10 production instances of this running. If I go down here, you see this other section. Let's just collapse these other two so we could see what's going on in the review section. In the review section, you can see that there are 3 applications running. And a couple of them have been sitting there for a while, and I could choose to stop those or redeploy them and such. But the one that I just worked on right now is the review 7 add wonderful here, created 2 minutes ago. And I could choose open here. Let's choose open. And what this does is opens this application, and you can see it says, hello, wonderful world. Yep, that's the text that I just put in there. But there's more, as they say, actually a lot more here. So first, I can choose this monitoring icon, and the monitoring icon is going to show me the CPU utilization and memory utilization of that process since it was created here. Now, there's not a lot to see there, but the nifty part here really is that this exists at all. It's that we already have some monitoring going on that, and I can see what's happening with it. Let's go back over into this and look. And one of the I think I think this whole thing is really nifty. I can also choose to redeploy this if I wished. Lots of cool stuff. Now let's go back into my staging area. If I look at the staging area and I open the application from there, I can see that this still has hello world. So once I'm sure that the application that I changed is the way that I want it, I can go back and uh, deploy that back over into staging by merging my merge requests. So let's go take a look at my merge requests here. And the add wonderful to hello world is set here, and you could even see in that last screen, I guess I went by it a little fast, there was even the green checkbox saying, hey, this thing is compiled and everything works just fine. Now, I come over here and I see that I have my pipeline set. It said that it passed with all the right stages. It's deployed it. There's another link here to my review app that if I wanted to send it to user reb, I could say, hey, or anybody, copy the URL, send it into them and say, hey, you may want to take a look at this. Does this look good to you? In this case, I'm pretty confident that everything looks okay. And now I'm user Mr. Smith here. I can't click merge. Merge is sort of grayed out here. And also, it is unable to be merged because it's listed as a work in progress, WIP. So if I could change that, that would allow somebody to merge it. Now, I could change that in 2 ways. I could click the edit button. I could go to the text of the merge request, and I could maybe make some additions there. And I could also check the little undo work in progress button. However, at GitLab, we like to, as I keep on saying, get out of the user's way and just provide them with the natural workflow. And here, quite likely, you're just going to say, yep, that looks good. Let me just resolve the work in progress status. So resolve the work in progress status by having 1 click here. And then I can come down and look and see what's happened here. It said that I updated that server.rb to add wonderful. I'm working in my merge request, so maybe I want to stay at reb. Look like this is done and ready for staging. I can make a comment on that. And we can go over here and see that there are a number of things here. Now, instead of the bucks that had me remove the work in progress, I can see there's a remove source branch. However, I can't check the remove source branch and I can't check merge because this still requires 1 more approval, and I can't approve it. I have to wait for Mike McLaughlin or Reb or John Woods to approve this. So let's go back, and because those are the people who are in the merge request approvers group. So I'm going to go and swap windows and poof, put on my IAM hat again. And here I am, and let's go back over to my to-dos, and I can see that first John Smith directly addressed me on this merge request thing less than a minute ago. Maybe I should go take a look at that. He says it looks like this is done and ready for staging. I could have gotten there by just looking at the merge request as well. But let's go over there and look at that. Okay, it looks like this is ready for staging. Let's see. Okay, at least let's tell it. Well, there are a number of things I could do there, but let's take a look and see. This requires one more approval, and because I am an approver, I get the approve box. So I'm going to approve this. Now, one of the other nice things I like about GitLab is, as soon as you approve something, I know for me, when I commit something, and we'll see this when we saw this when we ran commits, we got a oops, maybe you want to undo that commit. As soon as I approve this, it offers me, gee, are you sure you really wanted to do that? Quick and easy, remove your approval box if I wish to do so. And now I can let anybody, because I don't have a protected branch that I'm merging to, anybody who has access to this particular merge request can merge it. I could have put that up as a protected branch and made sure that only certain users could approve that. So I'm going to tell it that I'd like to merge this back in and close it. Don't need Mr. Smith to do that. I can do that all myself. And I'm going to tell GitLab that I'd like to also remove the source branch. This is not actually going to remove any data. All the commits that I've made are still there. However, the branch metadata that we have for this is really irrelevant at this point, because we have the issue, and the issue will be marked as closed, and we have all of the commits. So let's go ahead and merge this. And what's happening now is I had my request to merge in there. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, it says that the pipeline for that is running. I had notifications set on my in my Reb account to notify me about certain things, like when pipelines are running and such. So I have merged this, and you can see I only made one click there, and now it's telling me that the pipeline is running. It's updating the status of that. Uh, and it says that it's been merged, the source branch has been removed, and right down here I also have the oops button. The are you sure you really wanted to do that? Oh, and I can look in the upper right hand corner, the pipeline has passed, and up over here I can see that the pipeline has passed and all these stages have been completed. So I have the build has passed, the review has passed, and then the cleanup of that has passed. Now the cleanup is really the cleanup of the 7 review app button. And you saw that line just went away. That happened because I removed my branch. So let's go and take a look and see what my pipelines actually look like right now. Go to pipelines and environments. And I can see that I have a production environment. I have my review environment, which now only has 2 things in it. The review 7, the branch that began with the number 7, is no longer here. Why is it no longer here? Because it was removed along with my source branch, because that's now irrelevant because I have merged it. However, you can see in the staging environment, it says this merge has succeeded. And if I look over here, I can open that up in my staging environment, and you can see URL is even website staging, right? And hello wonderful world appears there. Pretty nifty. I can also look at the monitoring here. And one other thing that shows up here as well, by the way, is the terminal output. I can open up a terminal over here just by clicking. Now, this is the terminal environment for staging. This is just a Linux shell. I can do an ls. Now, this is running on Kubernetes somewhere. Not sure exactly where it's running, but it's running in Kubernetes in a Docker container. And I don't even have to worry about where it's running. It was picked up by one of my runners, but I can actually have access to this particular environment. I don't know how much disk space is in there, but you can see the whole environment there. Pretty nifty. From doing that, I can actually also fire up, we give you a way to just, fire off the application again and other stuff. So I also have the opportunity right here from this screen even to then deploy. We're going to go back to the regular environments screen to deploy here, but that was my staging environment. I can also redeploy that and rebuild it if I wish to. Perhaps something has changed, etc. So let's go and deploy this to Canary. Now, if you're not familiar with the subject of Canary deploys, let me just give a brief overview. Canary deploys, by the way, is another enterprise feature. And what Canary deploys allow you to do is, if you see here, I have 10 instances of my application running in production. In this case, I have one ingress, one place where user requests are sent, and then I have 10 different actual things running behind that essential load balancer there. And so if I deploy to Canary, what that's going to do is it's going to create 2 additional instances back there and deploy my new version there. The new version of my program will be running there in such a way that uh, some users will get the new version, and some users will get the old version. And we do this, and a lot of companies do this, so that they can see, are there any strange problems that happen to come about? There we go. You can see that that's now 100% complete. And if I were to repeatedly go to this open button here, it would round robin me through all these different things and pick one at random, and I would get, uh, you know, 2 out of 12 times, or 1/6 of the time, I would get my hello wonderful world. And the rest of the time, I would get just regular hello world um, there. So we can see that Canary deploys there. So let's actually now say, yeah, I'm satisfied with all that. I can also, by the way, monitor how the memory utilization and such looks over there as well, and be able to tell whether or not my Canary deploy was behaving properly in my production environment. But that looks good. I'm satisfied with that. So let's now deploy that to production. So I selected deploy to production. And now what's going to happen is my Canary deploys are going to go away, and I'm going to replace those with actual, actually 10 new copies of my application that are running here. So you can see this is working. And as soon as it's done, we'll go and look at the application and see that it's actually deployed. And you can see the numbers are increasing. It takes it a couple of seconds to deploy in this particular environment. And 84 seconds, almost done. 91% complete. Anyway, if I choose at this point to open my application, I'm going to find that I have a copy of the new version of it. And it will say, hello, wonderful world. So let's go take a quick peek at that and see. Hello, wonderful world. There we go, just like I expected. And so now that has been deployed into production. Let's go take one more quick peek over at my merge requests. I can see that the merge request for the thing that I had before is now merged. If I look at the merged ones here, hello, add wonderful to project output, that's been merged. We can see everywhere we have the pipeline output is there, everything is done, all looks good, and it's been merged. I can go back also and look at my repository. And instead of looking at the branches from over here, we can look at the branches just from the branch perspective and see there are a bunch of branches in here, but my 7 branch has been closed and removed because it has been merged. We also actually offer the delete merged branches option over here. So, and if I go back over to my files in master, I can see that what the last output of that is. So that is pretty much a quick and dirty run through of our demo. I had a couple of other things to show, and let's see. I wanted to talk about the enterprise level exclusives here. And let me just bring this up here, and just one sec. Maybe it'll even load. Here we go. So we talked about a number of enterprise level features, some of which are shown on this list. The couple that we haven't are things like LDAP group sync. That's part of the enterprise edition. This allows you to take LDAP groups that you may have defined in your LDAP or compatible server and really create a group in GitLab and map these things to each other. And then what the group sync will do is every time your LDAP server's membership changes in that particular group, we will update the membership in the GitLab group. So it means you can sort of create a relationship once and then never have to worry about adding and removing users from the group within GitLab if you have some central database to do that. Merge request approvals we saw. There are a number of different ways that one can configure that. So like I said, you can have the discussions, make sure that those are closed, and you can have group level approvers, etc. Protected branches allow you to protect who can actually push into particular branches. Um, Global code search is really sort of an Elasticsearch engine that's back in here and allows you to search through a range of different stuff, including code. That's part of the enterprise edition. Deploy boards, we didn't really have time to look at that. Deploy boards come with the community edition, but multiple deploy boards are available within, excuse me, deploy boards, I'm sorry, deploy boards we did take a look at. I'm getting mixed up with the issue boards, I'm sorry. Deploy boards we did see there, where we showed you all the different deployments that we had to review apps and such are from there. Canary deployments and multi-project pipeline graphs. Multi-project pipelines allow you to take the pipelines that we saw, but associate them with multiple projects, and then the graphs allow you to graphically view how these are working. You can imagine if you have multiple projects associated with a pipeline, it's a lot easier to see how things are working if you have a picture in front of you. As far as measuring and monitoring, we have a range of application performance monitoring that you saw some of. We have contributor analytics, which we perhaps can go back and take a quick peek at. There's not a lot in this project. And then some things that are kind of difficult to show at all, GitLab Geo. GitLab Geo allows you to have multiple servers that are associated with each other, and you basically replicate data from one server to some other server that is typically located in a different geographical region. This is helpful in low bandwidth, high latency sites, such that you can copy your repos over to these remote sites once, and then when your users wish to access them, they can access local copies from within GitLab, as opposed to having to each pull them down, each user pulling it down. Disaster recovery, which is currently in alpha, but it's that's associated with GitLab Geo, and you can basically associate a Geo node and stand that up as a replacement for the master at some point. High availability is way that you can associate multiple application servers, and it's basically a different infrastructure on the back end, such that you can have multiple application servers and allow make sure that you don't have any single point of failure cause your GitLab infrastructure to go down. And of course, with our enterprise premium comes emergency support, which means that one of our support representatives will be available to assist you within 30 minutes if you have an emergency of some kind at any hour of the day or night. And finally, our user and administrator training is available if you purchase our enterprise premium with, I believe, greater than 100 users, or 100 or greater users, excuse me. And that we basically come in and we'll help your staff get up and running with GitLab. I wanted to show you the contributor analytics, which I think we can actually, I need to show it from in here. Just one sec. We have cycle analytics. We have a number of different analytics. This has to be done. And here we go, contribution analytics. There's not a lot going on. We show this as sort of cross-project within groups. And you can see there have not been a lot of push events per group member here, but these are some contribution analytics that we can show you across your project. So you can see that I'm the one who's been doing most of the work around here in this particular group. So that was pretty much all I had to show everybody today. We have time for Q&A if there are any questions that Lee has not answered. I saw the little button for the chat flashing a number of times. I'm not sure what has shown up in that, but do we have any questions that need answers still?
So you're right, Lee has been very efficiently answering everyone's questions in the background.
Yes.
None have popped up in the last few minutes, but yeah, feel free to submit any more questions now if you have them. Otherwise, you can always email webcasts@gitlab.com, or if you're already using GitLab, feel free to open an issue or find us on social media. We're always happy to field any follow-up questions that come up after the live event. But yeah, if there are no other questions, we would really love to hear your feedback about today's demo. I'm chatting this link to you all now
I
because
was going to say, I hope we don't require people to copy this
no.
down. This would be terrible.
No, so that should be in the chat for you now. We will also include a link to that in the email that we send you with today's recording, so you can watch the recording at your leisure afterwards if there's anything you want to go over again. And we will include a link to this in the email as well. So yeah, let us know if there's anything that we didn't spend enough time on, anything that you would have liked to have seen that we didn't cover. It helps us to make sure that we're making these as useful as possible for everyone who's joining. And yeah, I think that's about it for today. If you want to give GitLab EE a spin, you can download a free trial. Reb, if you want to move to the next slide, I think
Of
the
course.
link for that is there. So
That's an
yeah,
easy URL to remember, free dash
yes.
trial.
Yes, so you don't need a credit card or anything to sign up for that. So you can always give it a go yourself there. I've just seen one more question come up. Maybe you can answer this one, Reb. Can I limit users' access to only use issues in a project for customers that shouldn't see any code or pipelines?
Well, you
Yep.
can
So
create a
this is Lee.
separate. I'm sorry,
So,
Lee.
yeah, I was just gonna jump in. I believe that if you give them reporter permissions, that will work. I'm going to follow up with a link to our documentation that shows you our permissions table. So I believe if you give them reporter access, they will only be able to see what you've given them access to there. So that should do that. Yes. If
Another way
not,
to
open
handle
it
that would
to.
be, of course, to just create a separate project that just has issues and nothing else, and then you can associate issues with that project. But, yeah, there are a number of ways that you could do it, but I think Lee's way is probably better.
Okay, I think thanks. That's it for the questions now, I think. So if there's anything that you want to talk to anyone about after the fact, if there's a feature that you're interested in hearing more about, you can also get in touch with our sales team. That's sales@gitlab.com. And yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for bearing with us while we lost Reb for a few minutes there. We really appreciate you hanging in there with us. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
All right, everybody, have a great day.
Bye now.